Hello, everybody. This is Thursday, November 2nd, and this is episode 49 of Block Digest. Today we have, oops, forgot the screen share off the bat, rush to it, block 492,824. And today we're joined by a special guest, Brian Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I guess, I hope.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have a nice conversation instead of shouting over Reddit. And then we've also got Rick, our usual meme master.
Hey everyone, how are y'all?
Janine, as usual. Uh-oh, where's Janine? Do we have Chris?
That's right. Her connection. Yeah. We're here. Her connection dropped.
All right, we got Chris today. Hopefully, he's feeling a little better, but he's gonna obviously let me play host for the day. And then Mr. Acnix, is he gonna say something?
Yeah, what's up? What's up, guys?
All right. So I guess let's just dive right into it. It's the 2x thing that we can't seem to stop talking about. Obviously, you just published your letter kind of going over a little bit of your attitude about things. We actually briefly touched on it in the show yesterday. You kind of want to tell us a little firsthand about your take on the whole situation right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so, we've been part of the NYA and the whole Segwit 2X effort for a long time, since pretty much the beginning. And we even put like a little bit of money in it to invest in testing and stuff. As OB1, and I mean, basically it's not shaped up to be exactly what we expected to get out of it. And to be honest, I mean, I think the article I wrote yesterday kind of hits on it hard, which is that it ultimately is just not accomplishing what we had hoped it would, and it was not worth it for us to continue being part of the discussion because for several factors, but mostly we just didn't feel like we were able to impact the situation enough in a positive way. So, ultimately it's just like, I think it's better for us and, both Open Bazaar and OB1 to just not be as part of that conversation. I mean, I have my own opinion. In fact, I said I wasn't even going to talk about this anymore. So you guys got me back into discussing it again. But, I think it's important just to maybe like clarify if people have questions or whatever.
Yeah, it's just, it's like when we bring guests on the show, we try to actually just like have a more civil atmosphere where it's like, I'm pretty sure you and me would very heatedly disagree about a lot of things, but just kind of a place where we can actually talk about that instead of just shout at each other. But
I think you'd be surprised. I mean, I consider myself much more an observer and learner than someone who tells people what to do. So, I mean, I find this like just as educational as entertaining. So,
yeah, I mean, personally, like I've always like thought you were a pretty good guy, and I know a lot of people have been shitting on you a lot lately, but when I see these threads with you, like getting into the arguments with people shitting on you, I've usually just kind of been like, hey, Brian, where's my funny videos?
Yeah, yep, I know.
But it's like something like Open Bazaar, and like we've said this and talked about this like quite a few times. Like it really is like it just fits with the entire like notion of Bitcoin as a currency and what it's trying to do. It's just like like Bitcoin itself, it's something that's been done like very early on, and like kind of like Bitcoin itself in a way, like you need that same kind of network effect bootstrap, and you need those like diehards to stick with it in the beginning to actually kind of build up off that foundation. And it's like one of the things like dealing with like Open Bazaar and then this whole Segwit 2x things is I think like what I try to do is categorize like people who signed up for this agreement and try to isolate motivations and not just kind of throw the same blanket all over everybody. And like Open Bazaar is one of the groups that I think actually does have like a legitimate, well-intentioned like motivation for getting involved in this, and one that's actually kind of a reasonable position and not just like a power play. And like, you kind of want to go into a little bit about what we were talking about with like the need for some kind of longer term scaling solution just to remain viable, like in the long term?
Well, I mean, okay, so I can give you just a little bit of background. I mean, like we just launched our second version of Open Bazaar yesterday, and I think right now, even though we have Segwit in the app for multi-sig transactions, I think people are still paying around $3.70 per like to get the deal done, to go into escrow and come out and like get it done. And for many people that seems like pretty reasonable, but a lot of our vendors are still early and they're like testing out the system and they want to buy a t-shirt or they want to sell a hat, which seems stupid right now, but like that's how this stuff gets kicked off, right? Like nobody's going to sell high value item to an anonymous person and risk that right away. And so for us to go and say, hey, this is this marketplace, it's censorship resistant, it's got no marketplace fees except for the $4 for every transaction, no matter what, I mean, that situation, and it could get worse, is very scary for us, right? Like it's basically a killer. And so this is something that drives like we want our vision to happen, but we know like these kinds of things are showstoppers. We know ultimately layer 2 may come along because that's what everybody wants. And there's a lot of people that are willing to wait 5-10 years for that to happen because they don't care. Their value is going up, whatever. But for us, I mean, we have a finite runway and we have only limited attention span and we're super early. So we have to be able to like do whatever we can. And so, when this was presented to us, we thought, wow, this tandem of like Segwit getting activated along with like an on-chain scaling immediately would be like perfect for us because it would at least buy us some time to keep fees low and still be like a really interesting platform. I mean, like when we first started working on Bazaar in 2014, I think the fees were like 1 or 3 cents or something like that. Like it was like so low that like basically we just said like there was nothing, no fees whatsoever. Now we have to come up with like creative literature to explain to people like why it costs so much money. Like vendors will sell stuff, and when it gets released from escrow, the fees get taken out, and then you're like, "What the fuck? I'm missing like 30% of my money." And you're like, "Well, don't sell cheap stuff." Like I mean, what do we tell them? And so ultimately, like it just makes our life like really hard. So we thought this is like a really great way that like a lot of the big players and most people in the space are supportive of. Let's get behind this and try and make it happen. That's basically all it was.
Well, I mean, obviously, considering like it's not looking very good for that prospect to play out, at least in a stable way. Like, what are you guys thinking in terms of trying to like kind of patch in like second layers as they exist now? Like, I know there's Nicholas Dorier and Nopara have their Tumblebit implementation, and obviously, hopefully, we have like an actual LiveNet version of a Lightning Network by the end of the year. Like, you guys trying to patch together any plans with that stuff in the near term?
I mean, we haven't like kicked off any like dedicated activities on those 2 items, for instance. I mean, we've looked at them. I mean, we've looked at Lightning ever since it kind of got announced, and I like Elizabeth and her team and stuff, and like we've always looked at that stuff closely and been serious about it, but we haven't really found a way to do it properly with like the way that our contracts work. But we're hoping to. The other thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to be having like a multi-coin wallet as well. So, ultimately, like if people choose to use one of the cheaper currencies to sell or buy, then they'll be able to do that within the marketplace. And that'll just kind of be like a hybrid market. And so if you need more security, you have a higher value transaction, maybe use Bitcoin. If you don't really care, maybe use something else. So, and to be honest, I mean, Bitcoin dominance is not as dramatic as it was before. So there's like a huge market of users that are in these other coins that we'd love to be able to tap into as well. And so maybe that will be the best of both worlds. That's kind of a little bit of our shift in thinking, is just like, well, maybe some of these are a little bit like more like transactional currencies right now. We'll see how that goes. So it's going to be both. Certainly like we're not afraid of like rolling out like new stuff. Like we were one of the first people to roll out Segwit in production, which is ironic, right? Like since everybody thinks we're so like anti that, but I mean, we basically built like a Segwit SPV wallet on top of BTCD, which they didn't have, and like we open sourced that, and like it's available. So we consider ourselves contributing back to the community big time. I mean, a lot of people criticize us for just being like posers and not really helping and not being part of it, but like that's a pretty big contribution right there on its own. We spent a lot of money, a lot of time doing that, testing it, like putting it out there. So, yeah. So I mean, like, we'd love to see layer 2 come. This is definitely not a power play for us. Like, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to take over the core project.
Yeah, I mean that's to kind of like wrap into like one of the things we were going to cover, after we get through this segment. Like, did you see any of like the Bobby Lee AMA yesterday on Bitcoin markets on Reddit?
Yesterday we were released, so I wasn't really looking at much.
Yes, this is like one of the hardest issues from like the social aspect of things with this agreement. I think is that you have. Like it's very much like hierarchical how this entire agreement came to be and like where the momentum is coming from, and you have like a lot of people like yourself or people like Vinny who's not even really involved in Bitcoin directly, kind of just caught in this web of momentum. And like I when I talked to you or like when I talked to Vinny, I mean he felt like he was kind of like digging in and trying to rationalize his position still, but like I could see that like there wasn't that like same kind of drive you see from like somebody like Garzik or Voorhees to kind of push this forward. And like Bobby Lee was literally like I don't even know where to start with that AMA. Like he said that this is an upgrade, referring to 2x to Bitcoin, and that's Bitcoin. End of story. He even directly said like this is a test to see whether things can go well if Bitcoin upgrades with only a subset of users deciding to upgrade. And then went on to say that even if the Bitcoin now attained a higher market value, that was an altcoin, and that he would not rename Bitcoin, referring to the 2x chain, to something else just because that altcoin has a higher market cap. And just like the degree of distortion there, like conceptually, it boggles my mind.
I can tell you, I mean, I have not been in every conversation, obviously, and I've not talked to everybody in the space, but I've talked to enough people running big enough companies to impact a lot of this stuff that believe in all of their heart that this is going to happen and that there is no doubt that it will succeed. I swear to God. And they're the same people that won't speak up about it. So it's like this quiet, like, oh, we know it's coming. It's going to happen. Now, I don't know really how well it's going to work, but they believe that it is definitely going to work. And that's kind of kept us very confident about it for a long time. But like, there are so many other factors for me not wanting to be a part of this, like, I mean, certainly for them, they have a lot more pros than cons in the situation. Like for us, like we're not generating revenue. We're not like sitting on a massive stash of coins. We're not like, heavily capitalized. Like those guys all are. Like, 1,000 people on Reddit, like being like, I'm going to close my account. Like that doesn't, they're like, we're getting 1.2 million a week. Like go ahead. The whole subreddit could quit and we don't care, like we'll replace you in a week. So, they have like a much stronger position to be able to sit back, be quiet, and go, oh, this is going to happen. But I don't think in their minds that they feel like this is like a pipe dream. Like they think this is going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, like that kind of attitude though is like where, like so much of the community is just no, like point blank to this whole thing, because like the entire narrative in the beginning was just like, no, we reached consensus, like everybody agreed to this, and so we'll upgrade. But like now that like we've had like half a dozen international like communities publish letters where they're actually like at meetups, like physically polling each other face to face. Like you can't game that. Or like closed like Facebook groups, which have like a much higher like resistance to a sibling, because it's like that's people's actual identities like voting on things. And like despite all of this just building evidence that like no, there is no consensus, like some of these people are still just blindly pushing forward like yes there is. And I mean, like how can somebody like me look at this as anything but corporate interest essentially going, we decide what Bitcoin is, and then at that point, well, what's the good of it if they can actually succeed in that?
I mean, I think that's like a nice, clean little narrative to to get behind, but I think it's like a lot more complicated than even that. I mean, you know, not to mention we haven't even discussed Bitcoin Cash. You know, I mean, that whole situation is like so odd. Like I published that article and like just as many people were excited about it from the Bitcoin Cash side as were from the No 2X side, because they consider themselves No 2Xers too. Like they're Bitcoin. So it's like this whole, and then, you know, like as far as it's being like a corporate interest, you know, I mean, let's be honest, there are a bunch of like the core devs and others involved in Bitcoin that are sitting on millions and millions of dollars of coins, and like it's like try to portray all these guys as like these like little users, these little players. I mean, like they could basically like tank the market together with how many coins they have. So, you know, it's just kind of naive to say like it's all you. And let's be honest, like the meetups and stuff, I've been to a billion meetups like all around the world, like everywhere, like a lot of those users are just like, oh yeah, what should I think? What should I think, man? Should we do this? And you know, and like they go with whatever. And I mean, half the time I talk to these guys that are like against Segwit 2X, I explain my position and they're like, okay, yeah, I could see it. And they were like ready to flip their opinion. So it's just a really confusing and complex situation. I don't think it's as easy as just saying like all the users are against it. You know, let's take a vote. I look around, I see like everybody's voting for it. Like I'm going to definitely join in. But I get it. It's not a consensus. I mean, it's not an overwhelming consensus. If it was 50-50 in those meetings, or like, you know, there were more people for Segwit 2X, then yeah, then I would feel much better about it. But I think to just say that like everybody is against it except for corporate interests is kind of silly.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm trying to like say it that black and white, but like one response to what you said though that I have is like things aren't like just a perfect democracy in Bitcoin. Like, I mean, like that's the entire rationale for the whole economic node theory. Is it's more of a meritocracy in terms of like your actual financial weight in terms of Bitcoin. So I mean, like ultimately at the end of the day, it's if you leave it to the market, it's the holders in terms of like coin amount that really are going to decide the value of those, unless like the demand from people who aren't holding now is just so overwhelmingly in favor of the opposite of what they are. And I mean, that's kind of the core dynamic of how, like, you know, consensus works. Like you actually have to have stake in the system to actually be a part of that consensus process. And like it's more like I'm not saying that like it's like every single company involved is nefariously trying to take over Bitcoin to shape it to work however they want for their business model, but like it's at a philosophical level. If those interests, like whatever their motives, can just push a change on things, well then like how can we say that this is immutable? And then as far as like the Bitcoin Cash aspect, like I actually mentioned this the other day when we had Alejandro from BTC.com on here. Like that whole situation with Bcash and now 2X, this is an attack vector I was thinking about 2 years ago. Like if people just don't want to fork, we'll fork off anyway as a minority, and then do it again, and then again, and then again. And as long as you keep the same proof of work, people are going to dump those. And then you're going to have higher concentration of coin holding on all these different forks, and it's going to be a lot easier to manipulate the markets. And when you have all of these different options with different degrees of profitability for the miners, they're rational economic actors. So they're going to go where you manipulate the market for it to be profitable for them to go. And if you do this on a long enough timeline, you can really start kind of like puppet stringing the miners wherever you want and rearrange the entire security assumptions of all of these chains. And like at that point, you pretty much kind of distorted the entire incentives of everything. And whoever has the money to push like the markets around, they can really just selectively fuck over or support whatever they want until they've distorted the whole landscape to draw miners towards whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like there's some like things that are out of whack, I think, in terms of like the impact that certain parties have. I mean, we have the core devs, we have the miners, we have corporations, we have traders, whales. You know, I mean, all those guys have some impact on the ecosystem. and in different ways, and they're going to flex their muscles however they can to get what they want, right? Like you said, they're going to act rationally. And I think, and the miner situation does scare me. When I was in Shanghai, I mean, we had coffee with Jihan, and I mean, one of the funny things, but I guess I should have it shouldn't have been unexpected, in hindsight, was they were like totally terrified of Bitcoin figuring out a way to have some kind of like true privacy. like fungibility was not, it was like so low on their priority list. Like it basically like was a bad thing for them because the government doesn't like fungibility. They like to be good in the eyes of the government, and fungibility is just it's not great for them. So, and then you sit there and you think, well, these guys are like securing the network supposedly, or like controlling a lot of what's happening. And so you have to question those motivations for sure. But I think one of the problems that I've always seen is like, there's this, and this next point is like, it's almost 100% the blame on the people involved, which is that these companies and corporations don't have as much impact over what Open Bazaar, sorry, I'm like an Open Bazaar, what Bitcoin is going to become, right? Because, if Coinbase felt, for instance, so strongly about the protocol and wanted to get what they wanted in, then they would have more core devs. They would pay for more core devs to work on the project. And I've always like been like, why is that not the case? But they have other things to do, and they still want like this like strong impact on what the protocol becomes. So I get that. I understand, and I would encourage all these companies to like participate more. Obviously, I would love to be able to hire core devs. I don't have the money or the bandwidth, but I think these companies are taking a lot of capital. They're taking a lot of risk. They're building companies of people that have jobs, and they're trying to grow that, and they're trying to make things better for Bitcoin. And I think they feel very alienated from the process, whether that's fair or not. And so this is a way of saying, look, this is the only leverage we have. We're gonna flex it. We're gonna show you that we have a position here, and that you guys aren't gonna just do what you want. And I mean, right or wrong, they're gonna do that because that's what they can do.
Yeah, but I mean, this kind of is like a game of chicken at this point. That's just going towards the edge of a cliff. Because I mean, like Charlie Lee. Yeah, I mean, like Charlie Lee tweeted out yesterday, I think, that if the 2x miners successfully 51% attack Bitcoin right now and kill it, and 2x becomes the chain, that like Litecoin's gonna come to the top now. And it's like that really confuses me on a fundamental level, because if the proof of work aspect of the system can really just override and stomp out of existence the original protocol and replace it with whatever they want, I mean, doesn't that kind of just demonstrate that proof of work is fundamentally a failed experiment?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I just don't see that happening. I mean, look at like you're going to see all these businesses and projects and code switch over to Litecoin. I mean, I guess it's not that crazily different, but still like there's so much invested in this Bitcoin brand and like the code and all these libraries and all that stuff is going to just suddenly be replaced by Litecoin. I mean, that would be great for Charlie. I'm sure he'd love that. But I don't know. I always envisioned Litecoin as the test net for Bitcoin, and I still feel that way. I just don't see that happening. And as far as like, if the miners force this to happen, I mean, the users, I mean, what the core could, if they had to, they could put together a code to change the algorithm and like, and fuck over the miners and try to move on. And there'd be this hardcore group of users that would keep going with them. And I bet that's what they would do. But like, what are they going to do with all that wealth? I mean, you're talking about people that hold millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin. If somehow that gets fucked up, are they going to have as much motivation to try and fix it and get it back together? Or are they going to just abandon it? I mean, I've talked to several core devs who are like, I'm moving a lot of my coins over to Litecoin before this thing happens to hedge. I mean, I bet you we're going to see a lot of that. They're going to be moving their coins into other things. And, I mean, we're watching the price go way up right before this big thing. To me, that says there's a bunch of people trying to push the price up so they can get the fuck out into some other coin right before this fork happens, and then we'll see what happens. And that's just super scary to me. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, potentially, but like, it's like even if we change the proof of work, like if this kind of dynamic has evolved like this, it's going to do it again. I mean, like you can't guarantee that like a proof of work algorithm is ASIC proof. And
No.
like we've already seen like multiple times like ASICs be developed for things that claim that, or for alternative proof of work algorithms. And it's like no matter what, it's proof of work will kind of converge to that same point. And I mean, like if miners can successfully do this, then I think the entire concept is just fundamentally like fucked from
Well,
the
there's a
very
lot of people that
foundation.
agree with you on that. I mean, I mean, look at Ethereum; they're moving to proof of stake. I mean, this is all like, I mean, you really have to decide is if proof of work really viable? Is it going to survive? And these are tests on that. These are definitely tests on that. So
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I feel like the miners just kind of think that like, okay, we can just push this and like nobody will lose any confidence in like this model of securing things or like establishing consensus for things. And it's like like to steal a phrase from Alex Bergeron, like Bitcoin is serendipity. Like this just happened, like the perfect sequence of events at exactly the right time in the right order. And like if even that unravels, then who the heck can expect any other system designed this way to function in the long term? And
it,
like it's
but have you, okay, so like, have you ever seen a blockchain like completely disappear and go away? They kind of just like zombie on forever and ever and ever, even the shittiest ones. And so I really just, I don't, it seems kind of ridiculous after being in this space for so many years and seeing so many of these like crazy threats that are going to kill Bitcoin come along and do this. I mean, I know that this feels right now like this is like some crazy different situation that's going to be like way worse. But ultimately, you're talking about putting like some of the smartest people on the planet in technology on this problem. I mean, the mailing lists are going nuts right now, like coming up with other clever ideas, compromise, all this stuff, right? Like people are not just sitting on their hands, just like thinking, "Oh, this is going to fall apart." They're actively working to figure this out. And if we can't survive these kinds of situations, going forward, then Bitcoin doesn't deserve to be around. I mean, this is not the last one. This is not the last one. There's probably people planning right now what the next one that they're going to like kick off is. I mean, some of the good stuff is that people are finding other projects viable and they're going off and doing that. I mean, at Satoshi Roundtable, I mean, I won't say names because it was Chatham House rules, but like there was someone pretty prominent in the room who like stood up and said, "Hey, look, why don't we just fork this shit? And the people who want it to be this go off, and these people go off." And everybody started yelling at him. "Oh no, we're not going to do that. You can't do that because it's not big. It's not going to be Bitcoin." And so the question is like, do we want to keep all these people together? They're going to just continually fight over what it is, or we make it easier for people to break off and do their own efforts. I mean, that's ultimately what forking is supposed to be for. This is an interesting one around, what happens when it's not a clean fork. Like that is something we haven't seen. And for sure, if it goes smoothly, that'll be great. That'll be a good confidence booster for the project. But like, if it goes badly, I mean, it's probably going to happen again. I mean, it's just like the whole airdrop situation with Bitcoin Cash. You see, you can create like this massive economy out of nothing and just airdrop all these coins. I mean, that's the new model. Let's just do it again. Bitcoin Gold. Let's do it again. I mean, success will breed copycats. So
I agree with like 100% of what you're saying, really. And I think that statement, you just put out really kind of shows like you are observing the space and you really understand that it's like, it's hard to define what Bitcoin is from here to tomorrow. And there is a group that are trying to define it. And I really appreciate what you are doing over there and still trying to get this, get something going with this experiment and show what it's doing. And I think it's interesting you're finding some ways around that and, accepting some different currencies. I was going to ask you about that. It was just, did you have like a timeline when y'all were going to start accepting some different currencies and which ones or anything like that?
So we've done some groundwork with Open Bazaar over the last few months, and we actually can run Open Bazaar on the Bitcoin-based chains. So we could do Zcash, we could do Litecoin, we could do Bitcoin Cash. Those are all pretty straightforward. I think the bigger problem is really the user experience. Like, what does a marketplace look like if it accepts all these different currencies? How do people manage their wallets? You know, stuff like that. So that's the work we have to do over the next few months. And, you know, we're going to try and get it out as soon as possible. But I would probably say we'll have something interesting in the beginning of the year. That's when we're going to really like kick it into high gear and start doing that once 2.0 kind of settles down.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, you know, coming on and, you know, really giving us your clear picture on things, because, you know, it's hard to gauge everything. Like you're saying, online, people are different than you know, and I feel like you've always been clear. It's just nice to get some opinion from some people in the space that are really in this. And yeah, I appreciate everything you are doing over there, really.
No, I mean, I appreciate having like normal, sane discourse with people. I mean, it's hard. You get mad, you get angry. People like insult you, and you say stuff that, you know, is aggressive and sometimes not even right, because you get pissed off. But like, ultimately, I mean, we all want this stuff to succeed. I mean, we've had, you know, people like say nobody's going to use our product, nobody uses our project. But I'm like sitting here looking at logs and stuff, and I'm doing emails, and we're like got massive tickets coming in from people that are selling things and like thanking us for like having a business. This guy gave me a fucking cigar in LA saying, this is really cool what you guys built. Like, it's created a new business for me. And, you know, so like we know that this stuff is working on a small level, and Bitcoin is the reason why it's happening. And so, you know, we're just going to keep on pushing on it, and hopefully we'll make a difference. So
yeah, I mean, like, you know, Czech over at like the core Slack, right? The Greek guy, like if he thinks of something he wants to buy, like the first thing he'll do is go check Open Bazaar. Like that guy is a fanatic about using that anytime he can find the opportunity to.
I think I'm understanding your model like a little bit more now too. I mean, really, you explained it in a very, very good way. I mean, I get it. I see it now. Whereas before I was kind of like, why? What's the like USP?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's
real quick.
It's not as clear. It's not as clear of a business model, you know, as like a lot of companies. And I think we kind of made it even muddier by accepting venture capital funds, which makes you say, oh, what are they doing this for? I think one other goal that we have over the next year is to like start trying to decentralize the management of the project a little bit more, and kind of get back to our roots around, you know, how Open Bazaar is built and stuff. So it's not just like OB1, you know, does Open Bazaar. Like, it should be a bunch of different entities involved, and people and developers and stuff. So that's another really big priority we have as well.
All right, now we actually got a question in the chat box for you, Brian. Do you think that the No 2x movement is detrimental to Bitcoin as a whole? From John Sterling.
I'm not really like super excited about gang mentality and that tagging. I mean, it's funny. I saw Tone in Vortex in LA, and I was like, it's like, you're never getting me to wear that hat. But you know, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like it's very adversarial. Like, when somebody has an opinion and you see that, you just like know you're gonna just be inundated with like a certain opinion, and I just feel like it's not a great like conversation starter. But, you know, to each their own. I think it's great that people want to like promote their position, and they're free to do that. So I don't really care, but I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And you know, to kind of go back to a little bit of what we were talking about with the whole like proof of work concept. Like, see, one problem I have with the idea that, like, you know, we'll just move on to the next thing is like one proof of work system failing, especially something like Bitcoin, which it's like the focal point of this entire ecosystem. Like that like part of the serendipity of Bitcoin was getting the network effect. And like if that proof of work mechanism there unravels and that network effect starts decohesing and scattering itself, like I don't see that doing anything but perpetually like breaking and scattering and splintering more and more. And really at the root of it, like the utility comes from the network effect. So if it's the largest one we've ever seen, like a mass just falls apart, like what are the odds we'll ever be able to get a singular cohesive effect like that going again?
I mean, that's a really great question. I mean, I mean, as a CEO, I mean, of a marketplace, I mean, markets are like the single hardest thing to get going, right? Like a Bitcoin market of traders and all these things. I mean, like getting that flywheel effect going is the nut you try to crack for everything. So I agree with you. I think that there's a lot. I think that the momentum has already grown so fast that like I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a true believer, but like I just don't see how that would get disrupted, you know, right now, like the way it is. But I can say that, you know, early on, what got that flywheel effect going was that people were able to actually do things with Bitcoin, and I think that should always remain like a big priority for Bitcoin. You know, that if that means getting to layer 2 as fast as possible, then so be it. But like ultimately, you know, gambling and Silk Road and all these different projects, you know, were a big reason why Bitcoin succeeded. And I hate to see that Bitcoin move away from that just because of, you know, technical problems that we could probably solve. So, you know, I mean, if it means moving away from proof of work, I mean, I mean, we're looking at watching Ethereum do that. You know, who knows how that will go. I mean, that could be a good thing to look at and learn from. Obviously, they're willing to risk their market to do that, and so, you know, we might as well take advantage of that.
And real quick to cut in with something. Apparently, Vinny Lingham is publicly pulling his support from Segwit 2x, referencing a death threat that he received. Anybody out there who is responsible for that, you are a greasy piece of shit. And threatening people's lives, fucking actually taking things to that level is completely fucking unacceptable on every level. Like, I'm glad to see that Vinny is relinquishing his support, but that is fucked up. That is not acceptable, and that is the last fucking thing you should be doing to try to convince people to change their mind about something. This
I mean, I thought we learned that. I thought we learned that from the whole swatting. You know, it's like, what are people doing? But you know, I mean, this is something that we kind of foreshadowed a long time ago, like years ago, is that, you know, when people start becoming millionaires and maybe someday billionaires, and, you know, I mean, there's a lot more at stake than just, you know, a couple pizzas with Bitcoin. So it's only going to get worse. And, you know, I mean, if you lived through the .com bubble and the burst and like how that just left a trail of destruction afterwards of suicides and people getting, you know, upset and crime and stuff. So, you know, we have to like be able to learn from those situations and do it differently. So I hope, you know, this is an example of what I was talking about. You know, people get like criticized for standing up for like their positions, and that's just like, it's messed up. It's like, we should be just talking about it and like working through it.
And I mean, Janine's the one who brought this to my attention. If she wants to hop in, I think she has some stuff to say about it too.
Yeah, so I've actually, because I don't follow him at all, I was just happened to go to his profile and look at his tweets because he did a poll a few hours ago asking, how about we come to a non-technical compromise? Segwit 2x adds replay protection and no chain calls itself Bitcoin, as in we just agree to not call anything Bitcoin. He says Bitcoin should just become Bitcoin Core, like the current Bitcoin that's at $7,000. And it was it's the poll. The poll still has 22 hours to go, but it's at 15%. Yes, that's a good compromise. 59% no, 26% I need to see a proposal. And then actually, because he kind of did a little bit of a tweet thread, which is this is the first one before that one where he was saying that he doesn't support Segwit 2x anymore. He says, from the Twitter outrage I get, I now realize that I don't know enough about Bitcoin to form an educated opinion on it. Disregard my tweets. That sounds very weird to me. But at least he's being honest and admitting he doesn't know enough about Bitcoin, because, I mean, that's something I've been saying for a long time, is that a lot of the people on both sides that are talking about this, like, one thing I noticed, I think it was Ryan Charles, he made a statement from the Yours Network giving like the different scenarios of what will happen he gave 3 scenarios of what will happen during the fork. And he kept calling the current Bitcoin Segwit 1x. And it's like, it's not Segwit 1x, okay? When we got Segwit, we did get a so-called block increase, although now it's not block size anymore, it's block weight. But we did get a increase. And I think that's something that's disregarded in a lot of this discussion, is that they don't realize that that actually was an increase. But yeah, I find Vinny's tweets very weird. And this was just an hour ago that he said this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like pedantic arguments about like what Segwit is and was, and what Segwit 2x is and does. I mean, ultimately, I think the people that are involved understand that like the Segwit 2x movement is about making on-chain scaling bigger. Like whether you want to call it block weight, block size, whatever. Like those are technical details. They want blocks to be larger than Segwit. And, you know, I mean, I like we said, discussed early on, I mean, there's like a lot of like downsides to forcing people to do that. And the way it occurs needs to be like organic and proper. Like it doesn't, forcing things down people's throat doesn't feel like a really great solution. But, you know, actors are going to act how they act. And, you know, Jihan, I don't think gives 2 shits what I think about or what probably you think about. He does what he does. So, you know, and he has a lot more power than he probably should right now. But hopefully he'll do the right thing.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to point out, I completely missed it yesterday, but one of our top stories on yesterday's show was about the Tapscots, who just did a new venture capital firm, and they were passing around a list of advisors that were not actually advisors because they had never agreed to it. Most of them hadn't. And in that article, it was really funny because they quoted Vinny a lot. And one of the things Vinny said was that he wouldn't be an advisor to this VC firm. He doesn't do advising anymore because he's done 2 ICOs now, and you know that's all done. But then at the same time, he's an advisor on Jeff Garzik ICO thing. So I thought that was weird. Like he didn't even acknowledge that.
See, I think part of the rationalization there is that because the money goes to the contract and they only keep their pre-mine of the token, that it's not technically an ICO. But personally, I would say that is semantic twisting of the finest degree.
Well, I think he actually made a comment on that particular. You're talking about the Metronome ICO. He said that he had made an agreement to that back in March, before he had made the statement that he wasn't going to advise any more of these. So yeah, it's like kind of semantics.
And I guess we got another question for you, Brian, from the channel. Are you concerned that if 2x succeeds, regulators will apply pressure to the signers to upgrade the rules again? Air quotes.
I mean, I would say like nothing is not a possibility, but like I've never seen any of this before. I mean, running a project that like is pretty controversial, and you know, we've had people engage us, but very much so like not pressure. Like it's more like they want to understand it. They want to figure out what they can do. I haven't seen this like kind of clandestine like coming up and like telling people they got to do something. I mean, I think they understand that like this is a decentralized enough approach. Like I know that like Coinbase has a really good relationship with regulators, obviously, right? So I'm sure that like their education of Bitcoin is influenced by Coinbase, and Coinbase is probably influenced by what they think regulators need. And so that helps them form their opinion. But I certainly haven't seen anything historical to show that they're like strong arming anybody.
Mm-hmm. That's like one of my biggest concerns about this, because like, you know, people will argue this with me all day, and like I just accept that at this point. But like in my mind, Bitcoin was specified by the first client Satoshi wrote, and every soft fork, every new client since then has just been like building within that initial specification. And like that's what I look at as far as defining Bitcoin. And like that's kind of, I think, the basis of why like no government has really stepped forward and declared it like an illegal security or something like that. And then when you hard fork away, when you break that compatibility with that initial specification, that becomes something else. You're issuing a new token. And one of my biggest worries is with all these companies in the space, like hard forking like this, like I see a very easy road to arguing that as issuing an illegal security that those companies are directly legally responsible for. And like that is probably one of my biggest concerns with this entire situation is I don't really think that a lot of these CEOs appreciate the gravity of what that could mean as far as legal precedents surrounding Bitcoin going forward.
I mean, you already know what they're going to do, though. You already know their approach to this is they're going to support both, and they're going to say they're going to scapegoat it to the users. They're going to say, well, the users wanted to do multiple coins. We'll just give everybody multiple coins, and they can do what they do. Like, I don't think that they're going to be. I mean, like, why are they going to be on the hook? I mean, if they're just going to play dumb. I mean, maybe this goes back to my comment about why they don't have core developers. Maybe they're just like an agnostic party, you know, that's like, well, you know, we use Bitcoin, but we don't build it. You know,
well, I mean, like you could try to make that argument, but I mean, like this was literally a formally announced agreement between companies, publicized in Forbes off the bat. Like you've directly seen Jeff Garzik take unilateral control over the code repo. Like, I mean, just publicly, I do not see any way that the signatories could argue they are not directly responsible for creating this. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be attempts, like if people lose money, to sue these guys and get money back or whatever, and who knows if they'll be successful or not. I mean, if the whole thing falls apart, yeah, that's going to get even crazier. But like, I mean, realistically, we're probably going to get 2 coins, right? I have a feeling that replay protection will probably get rolled in. I don't know how that could happen. I mean, it's like getting pretty damn close to this time period, but like, I don't know if people like Vinny keep stepping away and like, you know, let's say a couple other big parties step away, like, is Jeff really going to like hold this up by himself and like put himself in that position? I don't know. I don't know him well enough to make that call, but like, I would think it'd be like a lot of pressure to back the fuck off.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, if you go on the top left of the screen and open the chat, like you can kind of do a little more low-key coordination with your timetable if you want. But like I'd see you keep looking at your phone. But where was I going after that? Any more questions from the channel? I guess I've kind of just been discussing with Brian one-on-one.
Mostly just James Bond asking if we'll come to the dark side.
No.
I know. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, on the whole no 2x movement, and like, I don't know, like, I never really put that tag on either, just because I really think that is like divisive from the get-go. It's like you're automatically taking a side, and nobody's really gonna want to talk with you. And yeah, I feel like that's one of the bigger problems right now that we're facing, is just these separate echo chambers that don't really talk that much. And then we get an incident where, you know, something like this happens with Vinny, where it's kind of just like, yeah, some guy takes it too far. So yeah, I'm glad that, I don't know, I'm hoping that this thing is going to get in. I do agree we're probably going to have 2 coins at the end of this. But yeah, as far as, excuse me, as far as them taking control, I do see it also as kind of like a choke point, kind of like what Shinobi's saying, as far as somebody could go to them and say, we want this chain rolled back, or we want this change put in. And it just seems to me like that's a huge security risk, where, yeah, I feel like at that point it'd be a failed experiment, because it shows that it could be changed without overall consensus from everyone, which, yeah, I don't know. It's
to me it's not so much about like whether it can be changed, it's whether people can fix it if these changes are forced down. Like if there are coercive parties that come and try to change it, like how successful will they be ultimately, right? Like, you know, if the core devs basically pack it up and they're like, this is not worth it to us, we're not going to like fix this. I mean, that says a lot more to me than them figuring out some clever way to like stop this kind of, you know, problem from happening again.
That's why I feel like I don't know. Every time all this stuff is happening, I just keep thinking of the future, because I know that this, we can get through this. It'll be a lot more powerful on the other side. And like you're saying, we do see a lot of people coming together to try and fix these problems. So I think, yeah, we're going to get on that other side, but it's real stressful while we're in it.
Yeah, and what's even weirder is like, I mean, when you think about like Coinbase, if they're really getting like over 1 million users a week or a month or whatever it is, I mean, these are people that have no clue what the hell is going on in Bitcoin. Most of them, they're not in the weeds; they're new users, and they're coming in, they're putting money in all this through this whole time. You think Coinbase is going to turn off their sales of Bitcoin while this is going on? Hell no, So it's just going to be like a pileup behind them on the highway of people just trying to get in and don't understand what's going on and like what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to die. I mean, but the fact that the price is shooting up so much right now with this uncertainty, it kind of scares me a little bit. I have to admit. I mean, I like it, but
I'm with you. We're just a little scary up here.
Yeah.
And I guess we got James Bond apparently has some reading issues. He wants to know if you have officially withdrawn support from 2X.
Yeah, I mean, we basically withdrawn support for any specific action, and we're just going to kind of work around whatever happens at this point. And there's been some people that are like, well, these websites are saying you're still supporting it. I'm like, well, I don't maintain those websites. So I'm not going to reach out. It's not my duty to reach out to all those people and tell them to pull my support or whatever. Like they can figure it out. So.
Well, that's anarchy in action.
Yeah. The fun part about Twitter is that people dig up shit from like so long ago. Like, and they like 8 months from now, they'll be tweeting. They'll be like, "Did you support?" I'm like, "Really? Like, we're going to go back there and talk about this?" But yeah.
Well, see, I think that's like kind of a fine line, because when there's like contextual explanations for views changing, then it's like, okay, get the hell out of here with that. But in some people's cases, like there have just been complete flips with like no explanation, like no context. And like, in that specific situation, I think that is a perfectly like legitimate thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, here's what you used to say. Why haven't you actually explained why your mind changed yet?
Well, I think I'm thinking about like the next time something like this happens, I'm just going to answer in like this very like non-committal, nebulous way, like Coinbase always does, where you're like, oh, they're pulling it, are they supporting? Like, what is going on? Because that makes it much easier. You just make it happy for everybody.
You should just make like a meme, like a sarcastic meme, and just keep that around to reply to all things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this has definitely been an interesting experience for us because, we've been around since early 2014, and I don't think we've ever had people be like hating on us like this. Like, this is like a next level. I mean, like, you look at our announcement yesterday, we had like 13 upvotes in our Bitcoin, and we had like 98 in RBTC, and both of them, like the top comments were like, screw you, you don't accept Bitcoin Cash, or like, screw you, no 2X. So it was like nobody liked this, but oh well, we'll get through this.
Yeah, I mean, you know what they say about press, no press is bad press.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that like don't even buy my document and think I'm like, there was like a tiny violin that someone put in the chat, in Bitcoin Core, and like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I understand. I mean, it's never easy to like clarify a position or change or whatever, and sometimes it comes off like you're being a weasel, but hopefully like our conversation today shows you a little bit more about like what our process of thinking is. It's not like, oh, we thought you were going to love us because we did this and now you hate us, we're out. It's like my position about scaling, I still feel like it could be like really beneficial, but there's a lot of qualifiers there. Like, people have to be on board, and I think to do it in a way that like makes 60% or 70% or 40% or even 20% of your community like really, really hate you, like that's an indicator that you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out a better way to do this. So I'm there. I finally made that leap. So
I appreciate that statement. Yeah. And just one quick question, like just to get some like context of tweets and everything. Like I think I jumped in the middle of like a skateboard challenge between you and Tidwell. And I was kind of wondering like, what's that all about? Are y'all like just sort of seeing who can outdo each other?
you know, it started out as like just a random tweet because I was just like, I'm trying to like get my chubby ass back in shape, and he played like he was me, and I was like, I'm not gonna let this little meme kind of take over. So then we started a skate challenge, but unfortunately now we got like Andrew Miller jumping in and like changing up tricks, and he's like, you know, everybody's got a hard fork, you know, everything, like even on Twitter, skate challenges, they gotta like change it. Everybody's got to be right. So
well, yeah, keep that one going. I've been appreciating it from the sidelines.
Definitely.
And my 2 cents from the peanut gallery. I want my funny videos, Brian. Where are my funny videos?
Yeah, I put out a few more recently, and I had gotten away from it, but like I like the last 3 conferences I went to, people like every time they were like, "Hey, I really appreciate what you do," and they're like, I was like, "Oh, you like Open Bazaar?" And they're like, "No, the videos, like the videos are great." And I was like, "Damn, they like the videos too much." So I put out a few more. Maybe I got to come up with some other clever ideas. But usually DevCon is like the perfect opportunity to find some like stupid shit to talk about. So I'm gonna wait to see those get released.
I mean, it really is just like it is some Bitcoin car talk level awesome shit. Like it's just like it's a positive thing that everybody can like latch onto, that just kind of cuts through all the fucking different attitudes and views on shit. You know what I mean? And like things like that, when I see them in this community, like we need more of that shit wherever we can get it.
It's crazy the level of effort Mike puts into those Bitcoin car talk videos too. Like I do not spend that much time on my stuff, but like now it's gotten to the point where people are pitching me ideas. So my job is like much easier. But yeah, so if you guys have ideas, let me know. I always need them.
Nice.
Oh, we will start collecting them semi-regularly for you.
Cool.
But how you doing pressed for time, though? You got enough time to kind of stick around for the news segment? Or
I'll stick around, but I probably got to leave here in a few minutes. So.
All right, well, I guess we're going to dive into the whole 2x segment that I hope just goes away soon. So and a lot of the signatories keep saying that they have so-and-so percentage of miner support. Well, in this CoinDesk article today by Pete Rizzo, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Apparently, Jiang Zhou from BTC Top effectively said that they're just mining Bitcoin to sell it and buy Bitcoin Cash, and that Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin in his mind. So as a pool that's 12% or so of the hash rate, I'm kind of confused as to how he can be considered a supporter of the 2x agreement after publicly stating something like that. And then via BTC is effectively going to, where is this in here? All right, somewhere in the wall of text has said that they're only going to mine Bitcoin, as in the chain right now at first, and are only going to offer support for the 2x chain if their users ask for it. And he actually explicitly stated that they have had none of their miners approach them asking for 2x support so far. So, I mean, we've got, F2 pool pulled out, Slush isn't on board. The kind of mysterious comments that Alex Petrov made at that last conference he was at are kind of suggesting Bitfury might not be. And now we have via BTC confirming, at least out of the gate, they won't be. And BTC Top is making me feel like they're just looking for market chaos to try to push Bcash. So where's the panel see all this going?
Honestly, man, I'm really kind of confused by the whole Bcash Segwit 2x thing, just because, I mean, not too long ago, Roger came out and said that, you know, he was going to be supporting Segwit 2x, and Segwit 2x was Bitcoin on Bitcoin.com. And I mean, like, that wasn't Bcash. And I feel like this is just a bunch of that kind of signaling game theory that's kind of going on to, you know, we're not really cutting through the noise of what exactly is going on here. And yeah, I don't know. But I mean, like, I think we are sort of seeing that falling apart of the, you know, people staying into this NYA as long as they can and, you know, trying to go whichever direction they're going until they get the other side.
You have to keep in mind, like, Bitfury is like one of the biggest people driving the BTC1 work. So, you know, I would expect that Alex and his team would be like one of the last ones out if they were out. So I wouldn't look to them to signal a big movement. But, you know, when I was in Shanghai and I talked to Jihan, he brought like his whole cabal of like mining pools with him, and like they're all super tight. And so, you know, I mean, I know that like Wang Chun like is like supposedly out or whatever, but like who knows what he'll do. He was at Satoshi Roundtable, and you know, I know that he like tries not to like ruffle any feathers, and certainly doesn't speak for China, but like you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he even came back on board. And you know, so the others all kind of look to Jihan for support as well. So Slush is a big one though, that's definitely out, right? It seems like.
Yeah, that one for sure.
Alrighty, and then guess we got some other good news for people trying to get a little Segwitty. We finally have version 3 of Electrum with Segwit support. But one important piece of information people need to realize when they're doing this: the address format is going to be different when you generate a wallet on like Electrum just using the software. It's going to be using the BEC32 encoding. So if you generate a whole new Electrum wallet with the software and no hardware wallet, the address format for that is not going to be compatible off the bat with most of the other wallet software out there, because it's not going to be able to parse the actual address format and make sense of it. So if you do start with just a regular Electrum wallet, you will not be able to receive coins from anybody not using Electrum, because the wallet, until people start actually integrating the new wallet or address format, isn't going to be able to make sense of that. So just keep that in mind. If you do start a software wallet only with this, like, there are going to be those compatibility issues until BEC32 is actually implemented in more wallets. And then with the hardware wallet support, it's pretty much going to be using the pay to script hash format that most of the other wallets that have implemented things right now. So if you're using like your Ledger, your Trezor, or what have you, like, it should be compatible with everything out there. It's a normal address that starts with a 3. And then if anybody really wants to dig into the way they're managing the master pub keys and private keys for things, you can go look in their release notes. But yay! We can use Segwit, fellow Electrum users. The day is finally here.
Yeah, it's good to just see more Segwit adoption.
Funny thing about BEC32 is we rolled out BEC32 on our app, and like no apps had support for it. So our users were like, they were like trying to point their wallets at the QR codes, and it was like invalid address. They couldn't figure it out. We were like, damn, this is the first time we ever rolled stuff out like faster than anybody else. Like, people couldn't figure out how to pay. We had so many tickets come in.
Well, so there's a plug, guys. You can use Electrum with Open Bazaar. There you go.
Perfect. There you go.
And then Rick, sorry, Janine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm kind of surprised at how long it's taken all of these wallets to upgrade to it, because I've gotten paid now through my job 3 times with using a Segwit address. So, because I use Trezor, but yeah, kind of surprised it's taken this long.
Well, a lot of them are like, for instance, we have Shapeshift in our app, and like nobody can use Shapeshift either because they don't support BEC32, because they didn't have Bitcoin Core 0.15.1, which I believe is like when the BEC32 stuff rolls out or rolled out. I don't know if it's already out or yet, but you know, if they're built off of that, they're probably not going to have support for it yet.
Yeah, it's a lot of the little nuances and different compatibilities. It's like we really need like the great place to go see the things that everybody should be trying to catch up to. But Rick, you got us on this this India situation.
Yeah, let's talk about India for a second, since they're trying to follow Vietnam's lead in this ban on cryptocurrencies. And we got this report out of, I guess it's Business Insider or Business Today, and it's saying that a government panel reported recommending shutting down cryptocurrency dealers operating in the country, and mainly talking about cash transactions. And thing pretty interesting was saying that the Reserve Bank of India has refused to accept cryptocurrency because of security reasons, which you know, we were seeing sort of the opposite out of that new Fed chair candidate. And you know, it goes on to talk about how the price spiked recently, and you know, one thing that it did say, it's like a lot of bad wording in this article. It's like, I took this little snippet out. It says, this latest spike in value takes Bitcoin's aggregate value of market cap, its price, multiplied by the number of Bitcoins released into circulation to more than 117 billion. A Reuters report quoted industry website CoinMarketCap, which, I mean, like, it sounds like they're trying to say there's 117 billion Bitcoins. And I mean, I don't know. I think that there might, like, there's no solid evidence that this is all true yet, but I think it could be, just based on the amount of like activity we're seeing with Ripple in that area. And yeah, we could start to see basically this this setup where maybe Southeast Asia, or parts of Southeast Asia, is using a different form of cryptocurrency or token than other parts, and maybe this sort of is just sort of the beginning of those regulations coming into place to set that in.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like a lot of the governments in the world have kind of just been like flip-flopping back and forth over the past few months. Like, it's like everybody's like, wait a minute, are they about to do this? Let's do this, and then they change and like, oh shit, wait, we should do what they're doing. And
right, even that Fed chair, right? I mean, it's like, we support cryptocurrency, not digital currency, or we support, you know, digital currency, not cryptocurrency. It goes back and forth, and it does look like, you know, there's definitely some geopolitics to this as well, and it's gonna be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
I would not be surprised if India was one of the countries that does the ban hammer, because of all the stuff that's happened last year or two with the demonetization. I mean, that was absolutely insane. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they are one of the countries that ban it.
Yeah, that is probably one of the craziest things that I've seen in terms of monetary policy in my entire life. Like, from what I understand, that was like things just got straight up devolved back into barter economies in a lot of places because people had no other option.
Right. It was like they banned certain notes, like I don't know what their dollar is, but I mean, like, I think they banned like what would be the equivalent of like $100 bill or something, where it was harder to carry around money.
I think it was the 500 rupee note.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like, that
It was
was definitely caused some chaos.
It was a 500 and a 1,000, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I do remember it did cause some chaos, and yeah, I guess they're gonna try and ban it, but it kind of makes me wonder how successful they'll be, because like we see in China now, there's just a lot more OTC going on through web, you know, chat apps. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they'll probably try to take a stance, and we'll see sort of the similar thing with China as well.
Okay, so I just checked. It was actually the 500 and the 1,000 rupee note. So we were both right.
Okay.
Bam. Funny how that works. All right. Do we feel up to diving in to this AMA? Can we collectively handle the insanity that is contained within?
Well, did he answer? Like, I mean, was that ask me anything? It sounded like he didn't answer everything, right?
Let's dive in. All right, folks. So, one of the first things I want to point out is this comment by Flibber. He's one of the operators of the Whale Pool TeamSpeak trading group. It's actually somebody I've known for quite a while, relatively speaking. But he asks and brings up a good number of questions and points in this post. This agreement was specifically crafted to appease Jihan and Roger. Like, to my understanding, they were literally approached last, while Barry and everybody went around gathering support and signatures from all the other companies and actors in the space first, so that they could approach Jihan and Roger from a strong position, like, hey, you guys are the last ones, like, holding out here. And then they fork off with Bcash. And now, why are we still doing this? Like, why are we still following through with this thing that was structured to essentially appease them directly when they turned around and spat in all of our faces, forking off onto this other chain anyway? Like, how can we trust a repo and a code base maintained by a single developer that couldn't even raise the block size properly because he stopped paying attention to the code base like 2 years ago and had no idea how Segwit even worked on a technical level? And he even like brought up the fact that his brother Charlie Lee is constantly speaking out against Segwit 2x. Now, this question sat at the top of this AMA for more than 24 hours. It received the most upvotes of any comment in this thread, and he didn't answer it. Why?
I mean, yeah, why? It's like ask me anything. So yeah, it would be nice to get clarification on people's positions on this. And if you're gonna do some sort of forum to try and clarify your position, I think you should respond to even something that you might see as, maybe he sees this as like, oh, well, I'm not going to answer something from this side of the argument. I'm not sure, but I mean, like, I do think if you're going to say that you're going to be there and you're going to answer questions to clarify this, you should do it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, if we go look through like some of the things he did answer, it's turned into a lot more than just the initial questions. Scrolling. Here we go. Okay, that's, yeah. Somebody's pretty much asking him how he feels about the power balance between the different factions in the group, developers, exchanges, like so on and so forth. And the question didn't ask anything about the users. Well, Bobby's response was essentially, one of the reasons he likes Bitcoin is there's a balance between these groups. And he explicitly himself brings up the fact that the end users weren't brought up in the question that was asked him, and that there's no exact way to measure the percentage of influence or power that the others have. Okay? He directly says the upcoming Bitcoin upgrade, NYA 2x, is a good test to see if the Bitcoin community can move forward when only a subset of all the groups decide to move on to an upgrade of Bitcoin. It's unfortunate that this upgrade is not fully supported by all groups. Like, what the fuck? Like, he's essentially saying in very circular, vague, roundabout language that the small subgroup that I'm a part of decides what Bitcoin is. Like, just end of story. And I mean, like,
saying he would like the fact if his group lost, because one of the things he likes about Bitcoin is that no group has absolute power. So if you create a Bitcoin where it's basically run all by one group, well, that kind of takes out the thing you like about it, doesn't it? So he's basically saying, don't let us win.
I mean, that's being pretty generous there. But, like, oh my god, my brain is exploding even looking at this. As I was a question about why Huobi and OKCoin were allowed to stay open longer. He didn't have an answer. Here's one. He's being explicitly asked if he will honor the commitment made regarding Bitcoin Unlimited, demanding strong replay protection two-way for any consensus-breaking implementation. See, not just Bitcoin Unlimited, any other consensus-breaking implementation. Okay, well now, yes, I stand by that. Really? You're supporting a fucking consensus-breaking implementation that explicitly does not do those things. He then goes on to talk about how Bitcoin Unlimited was expected to have a minority of hashing power. Wait, whoa, what's this down here? Somebody explaining to him that no, that's not how that works. The entire design of Bitcoin Unlimited was that it will only trigger and only diverge in a fork if it has the majority of hash rate power. What's this inconsistency that he gets caught in? Does he acknowledge it? Let's see. Nope. No response after that. Nope. Nowhere. And oh, what's this? Per the Bitcoin rules, Bitcoin will continue to be the chain that has the most accumulated hashing power and produces the longest valid blockchain. But wait a minute. He literally just said that he's sticking with the Bitcoin Unlimited agreement, which stated that they will not consider Bitcoin Unlimited Bitcoin, regardless of the hash rate, because it's breaking consensus, but that the accumulated hash rate under this vague, undefined notion of valid, which he seems to be arbitrarily deciding is whatever he says, is what defines Bitcoin. Like, can anybody help me try to make sense of this? Because I'm on the verge of just ranting right now.
That's what I'm afraid I'm going to get into a rant too, just because, like I'm saying earlier, this is all about clarifying a position. And if somebody comes up with a question in response to your statement that is valid, I think that you should be responding to that. It's just like, this is why I feel like this is just sort of, game theory playing out where he doesn't want to get into too many details, just sort of saying something to appease a certain side of this argument. And until he can eventually step away from that ledge that they're walking towards, or go with the crew that's going to go over.
Janine, anything? Can you help me find some magic here?
Well, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about how we were talking about a lot of the nodes yesterday being run on Amazon Web Services. And so it's like, maybe you should just ask Amazon which version of Bitcoin should be the real Bitcoin. Let's just ask Amazon because, they're doing all the work. So let's ask Amazon.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, I mean, of course, we have a lot of nodes on the current Bitcoin that are not on Amazon. So, of course, Amazon wouldn't have much say there. But if they want to decide which one of these weird forks is the real Bitcoin 2.0 or kind of Bitcoin, then maybe you should ask what they think about it. Considering that, they're registering all these domains.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I think the market would flip if Amazon said something official with anything with Bitcoin in it.
Yeah, can you imagine if Amazon's like, we think choice between Bitcoin Cash and Segwit 2x. We're going to go with Bitcoin Cash. We're going to shut down support for any Segwit 2x nodes running on our network. That would be hilarious.
And this giant wall of text is pretty much a reiteration of what Flipper's post was at the top, except much more in-depth, much more filled with citations. And yes, we are committed to the NYA and will proceed with the Bitcoin network upgrade in mid-November. Thank you for your feedback and sharing your opinion. That's not condescending at all, is it? Like, you have essentially a full page filled with questions asking for clarification of a very complex issue. Yes, we're still going to do this. Thank you for your opinion.
It's like, I will answer every question except for the ones that make me uncomfortable, which is everything.
Right. So I was gonna say, it just sounds like something a lemming would say. I don't know.
I'm just kind of scrolling through, looking for one post in particular before we move on. Ah, man, where is it? I know what I'll do.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'll use those fancy browser features. There we go. Okay. Will you mine both chains if there is a market demand making it profitable, or only the so-called upgraded version of Bitcoin? I'm asking a very straightforward question. Please just give whatever information you can. Thanks. What's Bobby's response? Yes, we will support more than one chain if there's enough user demand and if it makes economic sense. BTCC supports altcoin mining. Earlier this year, we started mining Bitcoin and we will start mining Bitcoin Cash soon. In the future, if the Bitcoin Core Legacy chain, they've just made up a new name and a new ticker symbol for
New acronym.
Bitcoin.
It's a new acronym
Yeah.
that no one understands.
They will consider adding support for it at the BTCC pool. So, hey guys, we're going to mine Litecoin. We're going to mine Bitcoin Cash. We're going to mine this fucking corporate coin we're making. But, oh, Bitcoin? No, we'll have to think about that. If our mining pool that was established as a business to mine Bitcoin will continue allowing users to mine Bitcoin. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ.
No, I'm with you. It's like at this point, the AMA has actually gone backwards. Not only are you not clarifying a position, you're actually making your position seem even cloudier. And yeah, this is just this is awful. Should never have even agreed to this. I mean, this is just something that's going to piss off people to where it's like we were saying, like maybe this side or that side, they don't want to talk to each other. But if you're going to say that you're going to talk to these people, and then you're just a brick wall that's not saying anything other than what we would expect, then just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have some advice for people when they're creating acronyms. You only create an acronym if you're actually going to use it in the future and if people are going to understand what those 3 letters mean. If people are not going to understand what those 3 letters mean, then creating an acronym is useless.
Yeah, I had to kill the screen share though. That's my brain can't handle that anymore.
On to the next thing.
Yeah, Janine, you want to kind of help me brain fart a little bit about this SoftBank situation? It's a kind of an interesting thing to ponder as far as long-term consequences of things like cryptocurrencies.
I did not look into this one, so I'm not even sure what SoftBank is.
Poop, I need to keep ranting. Okay. Well, SoftBank is a Japanese company that's led by, as the Wall Street Journal puts it, singularity-obsessed founder Masayoshi-san. And they pretty much bought this company, Fortress Investments, for $3.3 billion. The interesting thing is, and I know I have not done the math, so we're just going to have to go with fiat values here. They had almost $6 million worth of Bitcoin in the company's assets. And pretty much the accounting for that value was done, it was counted as zero as far as the Fortress Investments net worth financially. And so now, just through buying a company, they have a couple $100 million of Bitcoin as an asset now. So, like, what exactly are they going to do with it? I mean, what's the kind of potential for like the legality of situations like this going forward? I mean, this is an actual asset that does have a value in the marketplace. But in the accounting for this business deal, it was valued at $0. Like, is that a basis for contesting the entire terms of selling this company? Like, how exactly does the ownership of that Bitcoin play out as far as, you know, the board of SoftBank? Like, this seems like a whole web of legal gray areas to me.
So wait, they haven't transferred the Bitcoin yet to the acquiring company. This is a deal that's still in place, or it's already happened?
This is actually, as far as I'm aware, done. But like, my point is, like, it was valued at $0 in terms of like the fortress's assets when they did the whole contract and went through that process. So I'm kind of just armchair lawyering and wondering if you could like void the entire deal on a basis of something like that.
Oh, so you're saying that because they now think the asset does have value, that changes the circumstances of the deal that was made?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would definitely be the case, especially now that the price has gone up so much, and I mean that's a considerable amount. So, yeah, I mean, I I'm so the company that originally had the Bitcoin valued it at 0. They still transferred it, but the new company didn't really place any value on it. That's what happened.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, it's
Somehow.
what is this new company going to do with these assets, and like, what is the strength of their legal claim to that, and like, especially like the whole situation. I mean, like, there's no real precedent I'm aware of. Like, I'm not a CEO or a lawyer. I don't deal with these kinds of things at all. But like, from my position in an armchair, like, I see no precedents, a whole bunch of gray area. Like, you know, how does this just work as a situation?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer either, but it certainly seems like somebody lost out on a lot of money in this deal. And you know, I don't know. It's interesting because if they did, you know, value it at 0 and it's still not transferred, maybe they're not going to transfer it. Maybe it's intended to stay with the original party. But like you're saying, I mean, like, I don't know. It sounds really cloudy as far as the details still of the deal, as far as where's the Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought this is an interesting thing to maybe think about. You know, it's if we have like hedge funds out there. Like, there's I forget, I believe it was Mitsubishi, but don't quote me on that. That actually issued a corporate bond denominated in Bitcoin in Japan this year. Like, there needs to be some kind of framework as far as like the legal precedents, the laws, regulations for like big corporate entities like this handling Bitcoin in a way that's not just your traditional like custodial like aspect. Like, I'm not like, not just an exchange that's holding things while you trade, or a broker like Coinbase that just buys it and sells it. Like, there's like, it's part of the asset catalog of like a whole legal entity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could make me think like maybe they're doing this before some legal framework comes into place that might avoid these sort of things in the future. But yeah, it's just like maybe, you know, I'm taking advantage of the situation as far as these things not really well defined within those sort of laws. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting. There's like multiple things like this where it's like, you know, how's it going to play out if like, you know, if your Bitcoin is somewhere and then something happens, and I, I mean, like, I don't know how this relates to like willing your Bitcoin, and you know, somebody passes and what happens to their Bitcoin, but I don't know. These are things that are still being worked out within the system, and once we have all this, you know, I think that's why this is still an experiment. It's like we're still figuring all this out.
Well, I think it really comes down to like, because there are two ways that they could have transferred the Bitcoin. One, they could have just basically given the new company the private key, which could potentially leave it open to them still having a copy of that private key somewhere that was controlling the Bitcoin. Another way they could have done it is just doing a transaction and sending it to the address controlled by the new company. I have a feeling they probably did it the first way, if, you know, they didn't actually place any value on it and it was just something that was passed along. So if both companies now have a copy of the private key, I guess it's whoever spends it first.
Yeah, I think you're right. About as far as our laws go right now, whoever gets it first.
Yeah, I guess we've been fucking dragging on for forever though. Janine, you want to take us into this this nice history lesson that you wanted to give everybody? 'Cause I have no idea about any of this.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I think someone said that we might have done it on a previous show, so I wasn't sure, but it's a great article in the Smithsonian about how, I'm going to keep this really short because the article is really long and I think it's worth reading. But short of it is that, guess what? The tulip fever didn't really happen. The gist of it is that it did happen on a very small scale among some wealthy Dutch entrepreneurs. But it wasn't really about tulips in general. It was about a specific type of tulip. I think they called it a broken bulb tulip, and it was just because it looked nice, and there was a craze about it, broken bulb tulips, for about, because so I'll describe what a broken bulb tulip is. It's tulips whose petals show a striped, multicolored pattern rather than a single solid color. So it's just a really cool looking tulip. But the tulip craze did not last very long. It was, I think, only a week or two, not more than a few weeks. And it was among a very small group of people, and there wasn't a ton of money lost when the so-called market for the tulips crashed. So I really find it interesting because this is one of the reasons this story is, like, it's basically become a popular myth, is because it's used as a warning tale about why free markets are dangerous. So because she include I think the article is based on a book that a woman wrote specifically about this and how, you know, it's actually a myth, and the situation was a lot more complicated than that. And yeah, I think it's very interesting that, you know, we've been perpetuating this myth, because she even mentions Bitcoin in the article, how Bitcoin's been compared to a tulip fever incident. I just find it interesting that, you know, we've accepted this story for so long, and it turns out there's not really much behind it. It was a lot smaller. But I guess that's what happens when, you know, a couple of rich people, you know, have something that they get obsessed about, and then something happens, and then suddenly becomes some kind of popular legend where it affected everyone. It was such a catastrophe. And yeah, so I thought it was a really good article. So anytime someone compares Bitcoin to a tulip fever, yeah, there's probably a lot more people that hold Bitcoin right now than have ever touched those tulips.
Yeah, that's that tulip bubble thing. I think is I've heard it, you know, described like you're saying here, where it's like these are just like people that were really into these, and they didn't, you know, they had the money to spend on it, and didn't really. I don't know. It's something where it's like the tulip still has a price. I mean, it's not necessarily what those people were willing to pay for it, but I mean, hey, you got a couple of guys that are going crazy for it for a little bit. I don't know. To me, like, yeah, I don't know. We're seeing more and more of this, like where things are being, you know, sold as a history lesson, but we don't really know the full history of it.
That's the game of telephone down through the ages.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to get into it, man. But I did see something about it. Apparently, you know, these JFK files or whatever. It's like Hitler's was still alive. We didn't know that. We got a lot of history learning to do apparently still.
Yeah, but now there's going to be a movie about it. So now the myth is going to live on because there's going to be a movie that,
oh yeah, you know it,
plays off the myth, and no one's going to look into it any further. And yeah.
Cultural brainwashing. Well,
yeah.
I feel all ranted out for the day. Does anybody have any last rants?
I think I'm with you.
You outranted me once again.
Well, it's because you you gotta talk. You gotta rant to like not get out ranted.
You covered all of the ranting and such, though. That's yeah.
Well, cut me off, and you can rant too. It's how this thing works. Ah, poopy. Well, I guess, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That shit is not optional until Chris gets back and feels better.
No, it's voluntary. Only do it if you want to.
Oh shit!
Take care.
I guess it's
everybody.
your choice, silly people.
Bye bye.